All right, I'm gonna go ahead and copy my background a couple times. So I've got 3 layers. I'm gonna go ahead and name my layers, and the layer in the middle is going to be blur. And then the top layer is gonna be texture. I'm going to turn off the visibility of the texture layer and go to the blur layer. And then we're going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we are trying to get rid of all kind of blotchiness and texture in the skin. And this has it going from between 5 and 9 pixels. I'm going to go relatively extreme just so you guys can see a really, really heavy and very obvious retouch. But you could go less. So, to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we're just going to crank it up. Why not? We'll go to 10. 9, sure. We'll say OK. And now we have an awesomely blurry image. Notice the glasses today. Okay, so now we're going to activate the layer above it, the one that's called texture. And the reason that we can see the layer below is because this one's turned off. If I turn this one back on, the image is sharp again. But I'm going to activate this layer by clicking on the eyeball. And now I have to go to image. And again, this is written step by step in here, but I would take some notes. So image, apply image, and then where it says layer, we're going to choose the blur layer, and for the blending mode, you're going to use subtract. All right, the scale should be 2. And the offset is 128. The exception to this is if you are working with a 16-bit file. This is not in the handout, so you probably want to write it down. If you are working with a 16-bit file, how do we know if it's a 16-bit file? It says it up there in the corner. So here it says skin retouch, texture, RGB, \8. If you see a 16 there, that means your camera shoots in 16-bit. And you could use the 16-bit algorithm to do this, but the numbers are different. Actually, everything's different. So you would still go to image, apply image. You would still set the layer to blur, but the blending mode would become add rather than subtract. It would be add rather than subtract. You would need to invert. So you would select invert. The blending mode would be add. And the scale would be 2. And the offset would be 0. This is only for 16-bit images.
Why is it so different?
I'm honestly not quite sure, to be totally honest. I mean, it is, rather than subtracting, it's adding, but we're also using the invert. Yeah. So that seems really wonky, but it's kind of doing the same thing.
What's the scale for the 8-bit?
8-bit is going to be the default, and that is 2, and the offset is 128. All right. So now I got to make sure back to invert and subtract. So this is the standard way for 8-bit is going to be layer, blur, blending mode, subtract, scale is 2, offset's 128, and that is the default. The scale and the offset, that would be the default. Okay, I'm going to say OK, and now we're going to change in our layers palette, the blend mode is going to go to linear light. And now we can see our image, and this is a variation of high pass. If you've ever used the high pass filter, this is essentially an editable high pass filter. So let me turn these off, and you can see that's the blur, that's the texture, and what you're seeing is really there's nothing different, right? There's nothing that's different until we start selecting areas to soften. So now we're going to use the lasso, and we're going to select the blur layer. Tools. And we're going to set the feather in our tool palette up here to something relatively high, 25. Now, I'm going to tell you that in this handout, it was hard for me to try to edit this handout, but it says, if you go to step number 5, where it says lasso selection, zoom into the face and locate the lasso tool, set the feather to 25 pixels in the options bar, that we've done. The part that I'm going to leave out is make a selection around an area of the skin, press Q to toggle the quick mask view to preview the selected area. It seems to me like kind of an unnecessary step. If it works for you, then that's fine. Essentially, using that quick mask is showing you how much it's feathered. So when you make the selection, we've got this big feather of 25 pixels. It's just showing you how much it'll be feathered. But you don't, it's not a critical step. So say for instance, I'm going to take a relatively large section of skin, and you can see that it went ahead and feathered it. Now if I hit the Q, it's showing that to me in quick mask, so it's showing you how soft that is and how feathered that edge will be. But it's not really a necessary part. So now I've got a selection, and I'm going to go back to the blur. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to crank it up quite a bit. This has a suggestion of working at around 18 pixels. I'll go to 20 just to, again, make it a little bit more obvious. I would suggest looking at your image to see about how much it's blurring it. I mean, this is showing the preview of it. And this whole frequency separation is meant to keep the texture while softening any blotchiness and softening any imperfections.
So, like, for instance, if we had made this a smart object and made it and did the little banding thing, we would lose texture?
You can retain texture, but it can be difficult if you have larger areas to work with. This might be a good option for you to use very light-handed before you even do the heel. So look and see what this looks like, and then you can compare that to one that you've just done the spot heel on. But this does a pretty good job of softening a lot out. I'm overdoing this to overemphasize the result, but you can do this much more light-handed. All right, so
would you change it, right? Would you change it in the feathering?
in the blur.
In the blur?
Yeah.
You just don't go so high?
Yeah, I just wouldn't go as high, and then it's going to make it a lot more subtle.
Okay.
So, okay, so we did a blur there, and then we could select another spot. You can do relatively large areas, avoiding anything that you need very sharp. Eyes, nose, and mouth, you really want to, and staying away from eyebrows and eyelashes, but you can, and again, you can do this again, blur, Gaussian blur, and if you wanted to lessen the effect in some areas, say for instance, they had a lot of scars or blotchiness in one area, then you could potentially just change the blur on different areas. Maybe I'll do one side of the face with a lower blur, and you can see, watch, okay, so that's obviously way too high. But can you see that in relation to that? So you can see the effect that it has, and obviously you don't want to...
Changing the tone of the skin.
Yeah, so it's evening out skin tone. as well as texture. But you could still see, like where there's, little scars, you could still see that. And that's something that you can get rid of with the healing. But this is going to just really even out the skin texture. So maybe I'll go low on one side and I'll go higher on the other side. Just go 5 pixels on this side. And if you get too close to something, then you just, use your lasso to start. Oh my, seriously? I've got a pen and I always forget, it's right in front of me. Okay. Select. If you can make it bigger. You can also reduce the feather if you want, if it's feathering it too much. And to filter, blur, and I'll make this one a lot heavier. Okay. And if you like the filter that you just used, the radius you just used, the shortcut to get back to that, you can go filter and then just Gaussian blur. It's going to use the last blur that you used. There's also a shortcut which is the Control, Command, and F. So then that allows you to kind of move along relatively quick. And doing it again. All right. Okay, so this is the effect that we have. All right. Deselect. From there to there. And you're going to find that if you do any searching, that you can use an action. People will say, like, why do this every single time you do a portrait? You can create an action. So for those of you that are not familiar with actions, essentially you perform a series of steps and you record it, and then you can play it back. So you'll find people who've already made frequency separation actions, and you just download the action and you just basically hit play. So it does it for you. Now you'll do the selecting portion of it. It'll say, okay, it'll stop at a certain point and say, okay, now you make your selections. But it'll do the blur layer, it'll do the texture layer, it'll make sure that the offset is correct and the blending mode and all of that. So it'll do all that for you, and then you just make the little selections. All right, so that's frequency separation, and it certainly has smoothed things out. You could go in at that point and then do some more blemish work. So anything that didn't get taken care of, or if you wanted to take out moles or whatever, then you could do that at that time. All right, now let's say that, I'll just do a whole bunch of them just to have a layer with stuff actually on it. So scars, whatever, another scar, little spots. And we can work on eyebrows now, and there's again going to be a ton of different ways to work on them. You can group all of these together and create a smart object, or you can do the stamp visible. I know I already have smart objects of this. Edit contents, and now I'm going to do my stamp visible. I need to have a solid surface to work with, because I'm going to use that lasso again, and oh wait, I need to, I'm going to use deselect the content aware move, And I'm gonna grab an area, and I'm just gonna try to clean up the brow by grabbing an area that's clean, and then you can actually move it down to reshape it. And that looks pretty terrible because I grabbed it from over there, but you can also clean that up. And I will show you some better examples of that. You can also recreate the eyebrows. You can make eyebrow brushes, which again, I've put those on the server so you guys can gain access to them. Rather than going too far into this, I'm just going to show you in a backwards process what I've done. Yeah.
Is that the eyelash brush?
Oh yeah. I will admit I spent a lot of time looking for eyelash brushes and not a lot of time applying the eyelash brushes this morning at 6 a.m. But yeah, don't get jealous. All right, so this is our starting point, and then the blur layer, and then the texture, and then some healing, and then I did a left eyebrow, and I copied and pasted for the right eyebrow. That still needs some work, obviously. Then we've got a stamp visible layer, and then I went in and did some just choosing a brush and some eyeshadow. This could use far more work. It doesn't have to be really heavy. Again, you can change it. All I'm doing here is just saying brush and then getting my colors. And you can use swatches. You can add to your swatches, or you can just use this panel. And if you wanted to take an existing like eyeshadow that they already had, then you could make that. Well, I just did a color sample point. And you just use the eyedropper tool to make that selection, and then you can make it darker in the crease and lighter above it. But I just did eyeshadow, like the dark part, and then on top of that painted white. But once you paint with a brush, and obviously you've got to be in really, really, really close. This is on an empty layer so that if I make a mess up and it goes into the eyeball, you can erase it. And where did my color palette go? Come on, colors. Ugh, there it is. So then you can just choose like a darker tone and then you can blur it as well. So then you can blur, and that is going to make it a lot smoother. So as you make those selections, and of course when you're doing these, you want the hardness at 0. The size of the brush, if it's a very, very small brush, it's going to be a much harder appearing line, and if it's a larger brush, it's going to be a much softer appearing line. But you can still go in and soften it even further by reducing the opacity of it, changing the flow, and then blurring it once you're done. So this just needs a couple different layers. Essentially you have darker light areas and lighter areas. And that's just for the eyeshadow. And then when you go in for the highlight, then you're gonna choose white. And same thing here, softer, large soft brush, and you go in around the corner of the eye, you go at the brow. Amber, this is probably all making sense because you're used to doing makeup, but crease, darker, lid, yeah.
What do you want to use the spark?
Sparkles are weird because whenever you try to photograph sparkles, then it just looks like there's missing pixels. Have you ever done that and like, no, it just looks like there's missing pixels?
You could probably try to find a brush for that. I'm sure, like, if she wanted to add like sparkle eyeshadow, something like
I bet that you can look it up and find it. I've never looked for shimmer shadow before,
I've
but
actually bought it in packs of brushes before.
yeah.
You could buy them, but mine were illustration based. They weren't like photography based. They have a lot of reviews.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So same thing here, then you just, you blur as you go, and it's gonna make it softer. And then I went in and did a liner. So small, darker brush going around the edges. And again, a good blur on that. Oh, I forgot to go over. So you can also change the blending mode. So on this one, that blending mode is normal. On the highlight, we did soft, because on normal you can see it might be a little too, it's too white, but blend mode, soft light makes it work a lot better for you. And again, this needs to be cleaned up. It's going into the eyebrow, it's going into the eyeball. That's not good. All right, the liner, just choosing different ones for the liner. Okay, maybe a linear burn, maybe darken. You find which blend mode works best for you.
It's like very trial and error, like what works.
The ones for this are going to be probably in the top part. If you start going to difference, then it's going to change. Here, I'll show you on the eyeshadow. Yeah, you're probably not going to be using difference on the eyeshadow.
Oh, you're kind of touching into my
I like it actually.
Okay.
For some mermaid makeup or?
Yeah, like that looks like something you would take.
That's what I was thinking. I
Like as soon as she changed it, I looked at her and was like, oh.
So I mean, you could certainly play around with these once. Once you've created them, then you can just alter them however you'd like.
Kristen's letting us free, and she's gonna get scared when she's like,
That's why I used to supply a photo to people, and I stopped doing that because it was a loved one, and I was like, I don't really want to see what you planned on doing to my mom. There's some people I'm like, okay, that's just
That's crazy.
no.
What?
All right, so what I did with this, if you spend a lot of time on it, you can just copy them and paste them and transform them. So that's what I did with liner, highlight, and dark. I selected all of them and then just copied them. And so it creates a copy of it, and then you transform it and flip it horizontal, and you can bring it over. And of course the eye shape's going to be different, but you can transform, skew, whatever it is that you need to do, move it. So if you spend a lot of time on it, everybody, I was about to say everybody knows, if you've ever tried cat eye eyeliner, one eye is perfect and then the other eye just looks like you have a black eye. So every time.
Hey, we should just copy paste from it.
Now, do you have them grouped? It looks like you have all the eye stuff moved into a group.
Yeah, so I'm gonna throw away those last couple of steps so I can show you what it was that I did.
Okay.
But so I don't. So I selected all three of them, and that's why they were locked together. When you select all three and copy them, then they become, linked together. So if you move one, they're all moving together, and that can be really handy. What I would do after this, so I've got my copies here, and those, again, not perfect, but you get the idea. Then I could say, okay, all four of these I'm going to put into a folder. So do you see at the bottom of my layers palette, there's the trash can, you know that one. There's the little copy, you know that one. The one next to that is create a new group. You may have accidentally at some point in time made a folder. And that's group, and you could just say eyeshadow, so that it's all together, because your layer palette is going to get a lot longer and bigger. And I still recommend making this very large thumbnail because it's easy to see kind of what you're working with. But something I am going to check, and you should know this by now, is that you're naming your layers to keep them in order. All right, so, haha. In order to bring in new brushes that you may have downloaded or or found, make sure that they're legal downloads and trusted sources. I used Phlearn, Phlearn. They're Phlearn. Think about Photoshop and Learn together. Phlearn. And that's on a lot of those YouTube tutorials that I sent you. They've got tutorials for tons of different stuff. A lot of it's free, and they've got a lot of paid content as well. But they had brushes that you can download, so you can see eyebrows, and I think that they just had eyebrows. Eyelashes, I think I had to get someplace else. But if you would like to import brushes, all you have to do is go to the brushes panel, and I'll do this from here. So we're familiar with B for brush, and then we've got this brush panel. Now, this may be what you're used to seeing, which is brushes and the size and the hardness of it, right? You're probably used to seeing that panel. But if you go to brush settings, this enables you to really change the shape, direction, the hardness, the spacing. But if you need to import brushes, just click on that little, cancel. Just click on this little palette, and you'll go to import brushes. Oop. Now I don't want to use the pen. Import brushes. And if you have downloaded something, then you'll just navigate to your downloads, and that's where you would find them. I already placed them into my folder, but if you downloaded them, then just navigate to your downloads and click on them. The file should be a .abr, and that's just a brush file. .abr. I'll show you what that looks like. So import brushes. So this is what the file looks like. This is eyelash .abr. This is eyebrows.abr. And then you just click on that and open it. And when you do that, then it places those into your brush palette. And they don't look like much, but when you click on one, I'm on a layer group, so it's not going to let me do anything. So then you can see your brush. You can make it bigger, and you can change if you go to shape dynamics, then you can change the size of it, and the flipping it X or Y. So you can do it has bottom lashes that are included in there. But yeah, so the shape dynamics. So those are just some things to kind of play around with, but I need to flip it back over. And if you get one where you would like it, and this is this side over here. Oop, I gotta put it on another layer. Well, I put it on its own layer so you could see. I'll just do that again. Oop, it goes to this eye. So that is too soft, and you can change the color and the opacity of it, so that's dark, but you can change how dark it is, and for the sake of the demo, I just went full dark. And then you could go in with a soft tip brush to connect all of those. So just going back to your regular brushes. And that looks really terrible, but you get the idea. So what I did was I did like a soft line around it, and you can reduce the opacity of it if you want so that it's not so stark. And if you get one like you want it, then you can just do the same thing that I did with the eyeshadow, and you can copy it and Command T, transform, and Control click, flip horizontal, and then you can bring it over here, and if it doesn't fit the shape of the eye, that's not a problem, because you can still do distort so that you can change the shape of it to however you need it. Make sense? Right? And I'll just dump down. Get rid of my copy. So I've got eyelash left, eyelash right. I've made one darker than the other because I changed the opacity, but and then there's eyebrow brushes as well. So those are the those eyelashes, and then they've got male brows, female brows, and like literally just a shape that you go click, and it's an eyebrow. If you go to Flern, they've got a much more involved tutorial that shows you how to make your own like single hairs, a single hair brush, and how to change that, and that's going to make it look far more realistic if this is something that you do a lot. But for the sake of this, I'm fine if you just use like a stamp brush. I'm okay with that. What's that? Do you want a terrible one or a good one? How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's make it big. And you would probably want to sample the color of like the darker, you know, like their darker hair. I would not go with a black eyebrow. Just, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But. Ugh.
Cheers.
Woo.
It just seriously, like, they used to have like Japanese photo booths here, and it would smooth your skin, and it would like make you thinner, and it had like really crappy like fake makeup you could put on and everything. Like it was all just so bad.
You know, Snapchat, but photos and stuff.
Right.
And it would have you stand, and it was like a standing thing. You'd stand in this box and have a soft light that would like you'd stand in front of, and it was just like.
All right, that's terrible. We'll group those together. Oh yeah, I'm doing it. I'm just gonna call it eye hair. Well, I mean, it's eyelash hair and eyebrow hair, it's eye hair. So now to the lipstick, and this is actually kind of a cool technique. You're gonna use solid color, and you pick your poison. What color lipstick do you guys want?
Blue.
Jeez, really? Okay. All right, blue lipstick.
Use a lighter blue so it looks like she's oxygen deprived.
So there we go, we're done.
That's it.
Yep, you're
The
done.
whole image looks great.
All right, so we just do a solid color fill of the color that we think we might want, and click onto the mask, invert it, and not with that brush.
My nightmare's falling.
Go back to a nice little soft brush, and whoa, just kidding.
Whole thing is a disaster.
Haha. So you can make a selection, and that is certainly a really rough selection.
She's gonna, this makeup's gonna look like when I put on makeup. Because like when I put on lipstick, it's like,
At like 4 o'clock in the morning.
yeah.
So this is, again, a rough selection. I would probably go to select and mask so that I could smooth it out and feather it, and maybe use the yeah, see, that overlay certainly helps. So then you can use the brush to, yeah, get a cleaner selection. I'm trying not, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but that's why it's looking kind of hideous.
I kind of like it.
Okay, good.
This is, I mean, I don't know how.
Well, then I've got your goal. Okay, so we've got, still not happy. All right, we've got it, and now, gotta have our selection. Okay, it's doing it again where it's not showing me my mask. I have a feeling it has something to do with Camtasia, but I don't understand how.
Did you create another layer on top? The layer 5 over there?
No, those aren't active. I'm on the actual layer. Let me see if I can just brush the color in like I want to. Deselect, brush. All right, yeah. All right.
Oh.
It's okay, it's all right, it looks good. Smurfy.
Like when you were a kid, you'd eat, well, like candy or popsicles that were very bright colored and got over your mouth.
Cyanide.
All right, so then we went to blend mode overlay. I'm trying to remember, I think there's some other ones. No, not multiply, don't do that. Linear light.
What not to do.
Mm-hmm. And this still looks pretty bad. I'm gonna, nope.
I like the yellow though.
Okay, sure you do. All right, we went to overlay, and we can alter this even further by, if you double click, then it's gonna bring up layer style. And you see where it says underlying layer? If you, right click, okay. So if you option click or right click, then you can separate these and you can affect how it's blended. So you see the shine coming through? So that's like really weird and solid. And this can give you, oops, I gotta break that apart. I'm just breaking this apart so that part of that layer of the underlying layer is showing through. Does that make sense? So you can have more of that shine coming through in the image, and you can still use this to kind of cycle through and see if there's, nope, definitely not. You can see if there's any of these that works for you. It's a little dark. Nope. Pretty sure it's going to be in that overlay range. Soft light, that could work. Hard light, probably no. Vivid, too much. But you can make it pretty extreme. We're just going to go soft light. And then you can change the color at any point in time. So if you say, I don't like the blue, I want to go to like a darker red, then you could make it more not Smurfy. Or what the hell, let's make her lipstick match her eyeshadow. Just go nice and purple. So that's, I think, most of the basics. Oh, wait, no, but wait, there's more.
Oh, I see the highlights up there.
Yeah, if their teeth, if you can see their teeth, then you can whiten the teeth. You can use hue saturation. You can use the curves layer. You don't want to desaturate the teeth too much because you don't want to make them gray, but you can remove some of the yellow from teeth. And that's just hue saturation and a mask on it. You can do the same thing with the whites of someone's eyes, but again, if you go too far, then it's going to look like somebody's like, used a Crayola on their eyeball.
So would you make a mask or you just do a new layer and do hue and saturation?
Hue and saturation layer, invert the mask, and then make adjustments from there. So you can also, you can brighten up the eyes. This one is done with curves. If I went ahead and did a hue saturation and say, okay, I want to saturate the heck out of this blue. So I can bring the blue up. And you click on the mask to invert it, and then you just paint back the part that you want. Say you wanted to turn the blue eyes and make them green. There's definitely purple eyeshadow in her eyeball, but it's getting on my nerves. But you could turn the eyes green, so you can make it crazy. And then I'll get rid of this one so that I've got an image to work with. What I did here is this is adding in contouring. So you just do a curves adjustment and you would pull over the darker tones So you can see where those darker tones are, and you can either do it by pulling the black over or by clicking in here and saying, okay, here's the darker tone. I want to pull this down. And then you go to the mask properties, invert it, and use a really big soft brush with a low opacity and flow. And then you just paint on the mask to bring that back in. So this is where you can create kind of a contour in the face. I am no master at this, but say for instance in the, like if you wanted to bring this out, 40, I'm gonna overdo it. Like the collarbone. I'm giving her an Adam's apple. So that would be the darker tone. And then on top of that, then you would create another curves. And this would be your lighter tone. So you bring your lighter tone over, mask, invert, and big soft brush. And this is where you can create the highlights in cheekbones. You can brighten up. I'm doing this a really terrible job. But on the chin, the tip of the nose, in these areas where you're wanting to create highlight. So that's a really bad job, but you get the idea. Maybe my other ones were better. No, not really. But so there, it's contouring the face a little bit more. There, it's adding some of the highlights in. And then to top it all off, I'll get rid of this one. I would group all of those again. I'm going to do stamp visible, which is Command, Option, Shift, and E. So that key command that takes everything underneath it and makes one solid layer.
How do you do that?
Command, Option, Shift, E. Command, Option, Shift, E. And you're not going to find this in any tool palette. It's not in a menu. It is a key command that I found one day when I was trying to figure something out in a Photoshop forum, and I was like, ooh, where have you been all my life, Stamp Visible? So
And that is literally everything you've done in the picture.
yeah, it takes everything that we have underneath it and then just creates a layer with it all flattened into one layer. So now is where we can, again, get extreme. I should have probably added some really terrible blush, but we're just gonna go past that. I think you guys can figure out how to use the brush and choose a color and paint it on and blur it and soften it. And now we're gonna go to filter, liquify, and Photoshop has come up with a new thing called Face Aware Liquify. What the heck? So I'm just gonna go down the line. So eyes, you can change one eye by itself.
Stop it. This is the
I really
worst.
want to have fun.
Magazines have been lying to me.
I can tell that you're wanting to have fun with it. So yeah, if you're familiar, there's a particular artist, a couple artists who do these like childlike portraits with like these giant kind of, big eye. So this is, they used to have to do it a different way. Now Photoshop's like, oh, you want to do that? Cool. Here's a super easy way to do it. So you can just do one eye at a time, but that can get real weird. So you can just link them together, and now we can go, all right, sure, big eyes. The height of the eye, okay, oh yeah, I gotta link them together. Just click all those and they link them together. So eye width, why not? Tilt, this is really fun, yeah, because you need lizard people. The distance of the eyes, you want them close, you want them far away? How do you want them? What you want?
This is so bad.
And then the nose, the height of the nose, you can make little Michael Jackson noses. The mouth, you want to smile? Smile, I said smile, smile. And then the height of the lip, the lower lip, the width of the mouth, the height of the
This is
mouth,
the one I wish we were printing.
right? The shape of the face, so we go small forehead, we go little chin.
Oh my god. This is The Sims.